Hello and welcome. As you know, I'm very much in the Tarot de Marseille tradition, and most of my videos have been about that, showing various decks and occasionally Lenormand. And apart from that, I do keep in touch with newer developments in tarot. I'm not completely stuck in the 17th century. And I follow various YouTube channels. One of my favourites is Second Thoughts About the Mission, which Rachel in New England puts together. And she was going through various decks, and she showed one deck in particular. And I tell you what, I hit that went in my basket before the video had finished. I later discovered I could buy it from the actual publisher, which is always preferable. But it absolutely blew me away instantly. You know, sometimes you see one of those decks and you get it straight away. And the surprising thing is, it's a modern deck. It comes from the Rider-Waite tradition, the esoteric tradition, all the things that are not normally my thing, but this one got me for various reasons, which I'll discuss. Now, usually when I see various decks being shown, I enjoy looking at them, and I'm always relieved that I don't want to buy them, because quite often there's a handful of cards that just slightly irritate me. So that discounts a whole deck for me if there's a few that I really don't like. The cards have got to be mostly good. If there's a very bad card, it's a no. If there's one or half a dozen cards that are not great, it might pass. This one definitely passed. Also, not too expensive, which is a bonus, because sometimes these are way out of hand. So the deck is the Mindscapes Tarot by John A. Rice. He's based in New York. He's an actor and a writer and an artist. And the deck came about, it started as a Kickstarter for the major cards, and it was so successful as a Kickstarter that Hay House Publishing, a division of Penguin, encouraged him, I think gave him some reward to work on this, to finish from a major arcana to a complete deck. So a little bit about this. Oh, actually, before I say that, and while I was waiting for the deck to arrive, I found another wonderful website. I'll link to Rachel's Second Thoughts About the Mission at the end or in the description. But also, while I was researching, I came across Lucy Neville's Tarot Cake website. She's an academic and a tarot collector in the south of England, and she'd also recently got this deck and wrote the most fantastic blog article. I mean, she said the things that I would like to say and wish I could say as well as she did. It's absolutely perfect, and I highly recommend you read that before you get the deck or after. If the deck works for you, obviously it's personal. So a little bit about the background to the deck and why I was attracted to it. So if you go back to the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, do you remember that time of lockdown? For me, as a natural extrovert, I found this so tough. Fortunately, my work meant I was still having to go out and about, and I did get out and about, so I was a little bit better. Otherwise, I would have gone mad. I would have been treated for depression, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, the nearly empty shops, public spaces free of people, roads that like out of a car advert, you know, where there's no traffic. But I was allowed to drive at that time. But my social world had closed down just like everybody else's. We were scared. It was very scary because it could be us next time. You didn't know how it was going to affect you. My art stopped. And hasn't really resumed since, actually. And I think it's related to my anxiety levels that were just through the roof. My inspiration left me to distraction and fear for the future and for my loved ones. And suddenly we were mainly seeing people at a social distance at best. Often they were smaller, or it was like looking through a window. It was a time of acute introspection, and people weren't looking at us so much. So this is the world of Mindscapes Tarot. No figures in the court cards. Instead, they're looking out from their abode. They and the scene before them places them and describes them, their status, their stage in life, or the project. So bear this in mind, there's not many people close up. Also, he chose to do this in his main medium, which is oil pastels. And as an artist myself who's used oil pastels, it's the devil's medium. It's incredibly difficult. It's very difficult to get fine detail, which is perhaps why he's avoided portraits and faces, because it's really hard to do those in oil pastels. They were done in, this is playing card side. I think they were about 2 or 3 times larger in the originals and then reduced down, so he could get a bit more detail, but it's not about the detail. I think he described his art as a more impressionistic and romantic and symbolic, and you definitely see that. So there's definitely more landscapes than people, which reflects this pandemic time. He has inserted some astrological symbols there. They're not for me, but they actually do integrate really well. I believe it was about 5 years in the making. I think he started off with the moon card, which I think he said he did in about 8 hours straight, and it's the most basic of all of them. There's no correction, straight off from whatever was on his mind and the things that mattered to him at that time. The moon card's probably a perfect choice for that. And then the rest of it slowed down a little bit, because he did the rest of the stellar cards. The sun was next, I think, and then the star. And in this day and age, of course, he's very connected on social media, and he put out the ideas to other people, and there was a lot of to and fro and help and advice and suggestions. And I think it stopped it becoming too personal, which is one of my criticisms of a lot of modern decks. They're very personal to that person and a select group, and they don't necessarily have as wide an appeal. And I think he's kind of cracked that. And it's not done by committee by any means. I think he's just taken suggestions on board, and it's still his deck, but it's also made it more universally appealing, more multicultural. I think he's taken some of those suggestions on board. I don't know what exactly, but it works. And I'm very sensitive to those decks which seem personal, and this doesn't necessarily, but I definitely relate to it. And I relate to it for several reasons. One, it's the medium he's used I love, but I find very difficult, so I'm in huge admiration for that. 2, he went through very similar feelings, I think, during the pandemic, and similar challenges. And I think at the end of the day, he's created the deck which I would create if I was to do one, based on those experiences. He, to me, has really nailed it. So I'll explain some things as I go through the deck in the next segment, but there's a lot about colour symbolism. He has these journal prompts, which I haven't used yet. He's got 2 extra cards, which are a bit of a shock to me. They're a work in progress for me. I can see why he's put them in, but I need to get used to that. I need to adapt it. It's still about a fool's journey. So going back to the original Jean Noblet type tarot deck, it's about a fool's journey and the steps on the way on this voyage into the world. This is what kind of urge to reach out during the pandemic and explore the world, which you can't do, and really being frustrated by that, but using the tarot to illustrate those issues at that time, which is done very, very well indeed. Is it a deck I would read with? I haven't used it to read with yet. At the moment, I'm using it more for introspection and lessons in life, almost. I'm kind of getting used to it in my mind, getting ingrained in there. Although ingrained, I'm not sure is the right word, because I just got it straight away. As soon as Rachel showed some of these cards, I didn't even need to know what the title was. Even though they're nothing like some of the originals, I got it instantly. It's like, yes, that is the Empress. That is the High Priestess to me. Even though it looks nothing like the traditional version, it just clicked instantly. So, yeah, I think he said something about, I think the inspiration is that the self is a landscape. The self as a landscape. It's almost quite cinematic as well. You can see his background in filmmaking. You can imagine it's a scene from a film, from a storyboard, and it's like, what happens next? What's happened before? You can really step into that, use it for meditation. The other thing is, it's not based on any particular culture. It's quite multicultural. The tarot tradition is very Christian, with pagan elements and classical elements. He's dispensed with that, so I think wherever you're from, you can connect it. I mean, I grew up in a Christian tradition, so obviously those, and classical and pagan elements, so those elements are natural to me, but not to everybody. So I think it is more universal. And also there's a lot of verticality, because they're not people filling a portrait aspect of the cards. He's had to do landscapes in a portrait format, so in a very vertical landscapes. There's this notion of verticality, of going up and down in the imagery, and that's all part of it. You'll see that in the deck. The other thing is, I believe everything was hand drawn, even the borders and the lettering. It's all hand drawn. Some people have criticised that strangely on reviews. I don't know what they were expecting, but you know, he makes it quite clear why he's done that, and I really don't have a problem with that. Maybe some print runs haven't been as pure as others, I don't know, but you know, the deck I've got is fantastic. The colours are great. They look good in really good light, in half light, which you might do. Sometimes they're quite muted and you kind of have to look for a bit longer to see things, but in good light, the colours are really fantastic, as they would be with oil pastels. So I'll stop talking about it. Let's have a look at the deck. Okay, let's just dive in and have a look at this wonderful tarot. If you did watch the introduction, that did give some background, but for those people that have joined the video at this point, I will probably repeat a few things. There's so much I can say about this deck, and it could end up being a really long video. I don't want it to be too long. I think ultimately, if you want to know more about the deck, I would just strongly recommend you look at the Tarot Cake review there, because she's done such a fantastic job of discussing this deck, and they're my thoughts, and we share the same views on this deck. It's just absolutely wonderful. So here we are. Here's the box. It's produced by Hay Publishing, a division of Penguin. It's there's the price in US. You know, the price is reasonable for such a quality deck. You know, getting them on board, they had faith in this deck from the look of the Kickstarter, and gave him this support, and it's thoroughly deserved. So as I say, John Rice, he's an actor, he's an artist, he's a writer. It's an 80 card deck, so there's 2 editions. I'm still working on using those editions. See what you think. It's a bit of an adjustment for me. It's also a slight adjustment from recent delving deep into Tarot de Marseille, because now I'm back on RWS meanings. It's not my preference for doing divination and card readings, but I think I'll use this deck in a slightly different way anyway. But take it at face value. Don't try and transpose your set meanings onto this deck. It stands on its own, although it does come from that tradition. You'll see what I mean. So anyway, the physical aspects of the deck, there we go. It's the two-part boxes, which are particularly good because they last longer. There's a card inside. That's one of those that's illustrated in the pips later on without the wording. Here's the booklet. Nice thick guidebook. Picture of the artist. Each card, they're not illustrated. I kind of wish he had, but it doesn't matter. I like that he has the symbols in case you miss anything out. And there are actions to take with each card. And interestingly, there's he's got the planets and zodiacs. There's no reversals given, but you can work that out for yourself how you use that in your tarot reading or meditations or whatever. It's illustrated using the star. Often the star's used, actually. There you go. And that's also on the cover. So, and here is also the final card in his trumps, which is in the back of the box. The back of the cards from another. It's not actually in the tarot deck itself, but it's one of his oil pastels. And as I said in the introduction, oil pastels, wow. It's such a difficult medium. I can't believe he chose to do that and pulled it off so well. So let's have a look and go through each one. Some I'll talk about more than others. Obviously, as expected, the major arcana cards have a little bit more symbolic depth because it is a very symbolic deck. And you will see, as I said earlier, and I'll repeat, there are very few figures that are recognisable. They tend to be small in the distance. That's partly the restriction of the medium he's used, which doesn't lend itself well to portraiture. And also that's a reflection, I think, of the time that this deck was inspired and created during the pandemic, when a lot of us were living more internally and we were looking out at scenes and not meeting people face to face apart from close families as much as we did do, and I think this that it's a good match for this. So it's a very different way of looking at the world of this tarot world, and of course we're on the Fool's journey. So here is the start of the journey. In this case, it's this hooded figure of a woman with a dog playfully jumping up, about to embark on this voyage with the Fool. And here we have these, that's his signature. This is the astrological symbol. So again, you don't have to use that if you don't want to. I don't in my own tarot journey, if you like. And these glyphs, which are kind of a magical symbol, which you're meant to, a very, very simplified logo almost, or symbol that represents the whole card, and it's meant to be very personal. And I believe you're meant to actually draw these glyphs and then dispose of them. But he's kept them in. I mean, they're interesting. They're a good exercise, something to have a go with. I wouldn't use it myself, but very nice anyway. Obviously, the usual thing is that, you can pause if you want to have a closer look at the cards. Just giving you a taster here. And the magician, there's the magician's tools. There's 4 sets of tools. So that's like Rider-Waite-Smith. I think this looks a bit like a spirit figure here. It's accidental. I keep seeing these hidden abstract figures in the cards. I'm sure they're not deliberate. I'm sure it just comes from me. It's seeing patterns which were not intended, or maybe subconsciously were intended. This is an absolutely delightful card, and I think, the Fool won me over from the start. If you have a ship of that era, a sailing ship, I'm in. That's me. You've got me already. But obviously, that's not going to be enough. I'm not going to buy a deck based on one card, but it's just one after another. This High Priestess, I loved this, and I got it straight away. You can't see a High Priestess. You've got to imply there's one, who I think is in this
tent. She's probably doing card readings in there, and this girl's curious to see what she does behind the curtain, and the curtain is an important feature of the High Priestess. Beautiful card, so evocative. Again, so I was there from the first one, the High Priestess, and this one. Where's the Empress in this? But to me, this card is the Empress. It's for some reason it's obvious, the Empress to me, and I won't go into why. That's for you to decide. I could go on about why I think this is the Empress, but you decide for yourself. The Emperor, this kind of harks back to Japanese art with the crashing waves and the colours and the balance of imagery and the thirds and so on. It's quite a simple, direct message of strength and walls and waves and protection from waves. So there's your Emperor. Hierophant, like a shaman in the forest. Very appropriate to me. The Lovers, absolutely lush, verdant, beautiful garden where the lovers could meet with these steps. You'll find, because there's no, I think I mentioned this, because there's no close-up figures, they're all small and distant, and cards are in portrait format, you've got a little bit of a challenge there, because the scenes have to be in this vertical format without figures. So, but you're mostly doing landscapes and scenes, so they're often very vertical. It's often about the up and down and up. So you're scanning up and down the cards for clues and symbols and meaning. But it works. The chariot, here we have a chariot, is a royal barge on the River Nile, I presume, because there's pyramids in the distance. Occasionally there are these geographical hints, but they're not excluding. So justice, we've got the Senate building, institutions of power and authority. The Hermit. There's symbols on the walls here. You don't see the Hermit, but it's inferred that the Hermit lives in this cave. Wheel of Fortune is a spider's web. Perfect. I get that. It's circular. You can be the prey or preyed upon. It's the ups and downs of life. But at the centre is the spider who's twitching and sensing movement and moving towards it and changing the course of that life. Strength, I see this about, I think that's a horse whisperer, so it's this gentle strength. Hanged One. The polar bear on the ice floe. Different viewpoint, looking up at the beauty of the sky while floating off. Kind of abandoned by the world. Perfect. Death, the wonderful Death card actually. It's probably an American Civil War battle scene of Gettysburg. I think that inspired this one. But amidst this, what was historical carnage, there is growth, things coming back to life. Temperance has fire and water. Volcano often appears in the background of traditional Rider-Waite-Smith temperance cards. The fire bubbling and steaming into the sea over the edge. A very clever devil card, because suddenly we're in the city and the bright lights and the madness and the chaos of the city, and this tram car with the lights could almost be eyes, the red centre, and perhaps this harking back to the tongue sticking out of the devil's mouth. Again, it's a card I totally get as the devil. I have no trouble seen what he's getting at with any of these cards, really. Sometimes, especially with modern decks, I have to look and think, what are they getting at with that? It means something to them, but I don't get it. It's quite hard to understand this. But with this deck, no, I don't even really need the little white book with this deck, because it just works so powerfully for me. Tower is kind of a fairy tale tower. The star, this is one of his earlier designs, and it's the one used on the deck. No girl pouring water, but there is this care and hope with the doe and the fawn not seeming to see the star. The moon card was the first card he drew, I believe, and I think he said he did this in about 8 hours. So it's quite basic, and obviously came from somewhere within. He just had to do this during the COVID pandemic, and this was the one that kick-started the project for him. And then after the moon, I think it was the star and the sun. And then, but these cards took much longer, because then he started to ask for, or not ask, but put these ideas out on social media, and it developed in some sort of cooperation with others. Obviously it's his deck, but he got ideas and shared the development with others. But it worked. It wasn't death by committee. It's still very much his deck. Judgment, wonderful judgment. There's a trumpeter, horn player there, and this tomb is open, and there's these colours again changing throughout. The world harks back to Greek gods, I think. There's a temple here, a waterfall pouring into the sea at the harbour point, and the path going up perhaps to Mount Olympus up here. And now we've got the extra cards. So we've got the Catacomb, which I think he describes as about ancestors and the influence of ancestors and the dead and those that have gone before on our life, our existence. I like that. It's a big change for me. It's a bit radical, but I think that's good. I like it. Approve. The great work is really from Hermeticism. It's this concept of the complete thing, if you like, of everything. I'm transported to like Norway with this, above the Arctic Circle. Although I think this is either a sunset or sunrise, it's a very wintry landscape. John himself is a New Yorker, so and he's from a farming background, so he's got these influences of this kind of landscape. He'd be very familiar with winter, that's for sure. But also of growing and tending for the land. And living in New York, it's a harbour city, so there's the connection with the sea as well. So all these influences, I think, come out in this deck. And there we go. So there's our trump cards. I'll just move them to one side. We'll now go a little bit quicker through the pips and courts. So our branches, or wands, or batons, they're now branches. I think this comes from his farming background, and I totally approve, because for years I worked in arboriculture and trees were my life, and forestry. So I'm in with this one as well. So 1 tree, ace. 2. Notice the sky changes. This influences the meaning. 3. The influence of man interfering or tending or caring for these trees to protect them and encourage them. I know all about this from my work. This is so familiar. And 4, we now have an orchard. We're getting a crop from them. 5 is a natural cycle of growth and decay and death and harvesting and forestry, cutting through to help the forest grow better. 6, there's people decorated the trees. 7, natural disaster. It could all come undone. 8, start again. But probably not planted, but just natural regeneration. Animals getting a little bit overcrowded in the winter. 10, the final forest, but a bit too thick. As a forester, I would look at that and think a little bit too dense, not allowing enough light through below. But it's kind of complete and mature. And then we've got the court cards. We never see any of the court figures. We're looking their viewpoint, looking out at their world with little clues as to which stage in life they're at. So we've got this trapdoor from a treehouse looking down the page, a young person. And the knight is a bit more active out in the woods camping, looking through the tent, I would say. So a bit more active. The queen now has a house or a store cupboard or a shed or a summer house, whatever you want to call it, made it a bit more attractive and comfortable and doing rather nicely. And now we have the king with a bit more action and electric light. It's all looking very good in this mill house. And then the next influence, I believe, again, I said, he's a New Yorker, he's the harbour city, so for the water element, remember this is a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, so the elements do come into this. Rather than cups, he's chosen to use a watery element, and this tides, so it's the coming and going, the rise and fall of water. And with all these pip cards, there is one place, and it's how that place changes over time, because there is this core element to all of us that doesn't change, or changes very, very slowly, but there are other things that influence us and that do change on the outside, depending on our mood and events in our lives. So with these tides cards, there's a lot of colour theory in this. So the colours are meant to hit you first, if you like, because the scenes are very basic, really, quite simplified. So you're meant to have it's meant to be a kind of an emotional impact to seeing certain colours, which, again, he does it. It works. So the feelings they invoke are fairly simple reactions to these basic images and the colours. That's all it needs to be. There's the stars up there. I love the colours on them. The waves are whipping up, and here's a very peaceful, calm card. So the colours are deliberately very soft, very calm. Just two yachts out there having fun, not even racing. Into the night time with the moon, a fairly big sea. And here we have a storm, because, emotions aren't always calm. A nice hopeful voyage going off there. And there's the end, and it's the card used in the box here. And then the figures. So the sign that there's a human here is this sand castle. It's quite subtle, because it's, it's emotions, it's a feeling rather than, an object that's very strictly defined. There's the activity of the knight. Instead of being on a horse, he's on his ship. Then the queen. This is one of my favourite cards in all the pips, actually. I love this image. It transports me to New England, the east coast of America, which is where he's from. I think it's just beautiful, very evocative, very well composed and painted card with real depth. Beautiful, beautiful card. King of Tides, well, he's got built structures, but you can see the sea in the distance. That's the king imposing his will on the coast, if you like. from his abode. I think you're always seeing it from their abode. So instead of swords, we now have spires. That's the shape. It's a pointy thing, isn't it? It's a pointy thing, and the element is air. So some of these are really quite abstract because they're meant to be quite airy images. So we're looking at the clouds and the simplicity of the shapes. Okay, there's not much going on when you probe into this, but it's meant to invoke a feeling of notions, of thoughts and things that move fleetingly, perhaps. So here, this one's particularly abstract. And the interest about the spires is if you turn them upside down, they work quite well upside down because they kind of have a different perspective. Occasionally, I think the spires look like faces, hooded figures, and occasionally they look like flowers when they're upside down, or even crystals. There's just ropeways between them. This one particularly is quite abstract. There's more as well. And traditionally the sword suit can be really horribly negative sometimes, and the slightly scary, frightening aspect of mountains can come across really well in this. It's quite hard to achieve with such abstract images, but again, he's done it. That's brilliant. So here's the page in a hot air balloon at the whim of the air. Here, a bit more in control. I think it's a helicopter rather than an airplane. Yeah, so the knight has taken control of his means of transport. The Queen, quite abstract and airy, as the Queen of Swords is as well, so it's the Queen of Spires. Oh, I thought I'd put that one upside down, let's put it back around. As you see, it's all in order at the moment because I just wanted to do this video and do it through in succession. And then finally, I'll just make a bit of room actually. Finally, we've got, instead of discs or pentacles, this represents the element of earth. I don't agree with that in the elements, but anyway, it works for this. It has its internal logic. So we have a desert town that grows and goes through various stages in its history, which is a very clever way of representing this suit. We've got lines, people, and now we're making it. And there are figures, very small figures occasionally appear. The other city is really growing here. I think this is very clever. He's done a sandstorm. To do that with oil pastels, I can't imagine how difficult that is. He could have chosen chalk pastels or watercolours or oils or acrylics or any other medium would have been much easier, but he's given himself a hard time with that, but it's brilliant. And there's these figures again. You can make a story of that very easily. So there's some reconstruction going on here. More prosperous. And then finally, it's the end of this city or civilization, and modern man has come and found signs of it uncovered from the sands of the desert, but there's still elements of it. That's brilliant, isn't it? I love that. And we've got this page in the schoolroom, elements of learning and design for the town. The knight is actually doing something about it, looking out from the stables. The Queen is in luxury, beautiful Middle Eastern rune. And there's the king with his clock looking out over his kingdom. So yeah, it's just a fabulous, fabulous deck. Let's put the first one out there. You can probably see why I just fell in love. All the themes just really tick boxes for me. It's multicultural, it's cinematic, it's mythological, it's romantic. It has a fool's journey and the stopping off places on route. It needs little explanation. It's intriguing because it doesn't have any full-face figures for you to impose your views on. You've got to read into the scene. It's all about scenes, isn't it? And I think, again, as I said before, it's part of that time where we were probably watching more television and more films than we ever did. We were looking out at figures in the distance and imagining what could happen. But anyway, I was rounding up, and really it was just to summarise about John's cinematic influences and the countryside of New York State and New York City and the sea. All those things coming together during that pandemic time. He's obviously a man with great depth and great artistic talent, because he's using such a challenging medium to do something that normally needs quite detailed finesse, but he's done so well. The other thing is to thank Rachel over at Second Thoughts About the Mission for inspiring me lots of times in lots of ways with different cultural moments in her life, and keeping up the good work of promoting tarot. And it was just very fortunate that I saw that at the right time. So thank you for that. And also to Lucy over at Tarot Cake for giving me different decks to look at outside my usual. Keeps me on my toes, stops me getting stuck in set ways. She's great at encouraging Kickstarter projects and new deck creators. But that review of Mindscapes, that's really fantastic. I wish I could write as well as that. So thank you, Lucy, for that as well. And the last thought is, I don't know if I said it earlier, is what I do with the deck. I don't usually use RWS for divination. I prefer the historical Tarot de Marseille. I find it's far more flexible and detailed, actually. But this deck will trigger different things. It'd be good for meditation, perhaps some shadow work, personal development. We'll see how it goes. It'd be interesting. I mean, it is a fantastic deck. You know, does John really realise what he's done here? It's a deck for the decade for me. It's really special. So thank you for that. Remember to subscribe, probably be here, and to like, and add any thoughts and comments. And I'll try and put some links up to these people, and you'll find where to buy it yourself. I'd recommend you buy it from the publisher, which is Hay Publishing, rather than the Evil Empire, if you can. It's well worth it. So that's it for now. Next video, not sure when it will happen. When I have time, it will probably be another Lenormand Grand Tableau instruction video. Okay, thanks for watching then. Bye.